Imagine the horror, the chaos. No, I must keep going, no matter what, no matter who or how. Must continue, never cease. The train cannot stop. It cannot. Does my team know I'm in here? They'll send somebody to assist, but I cannot stop.
Okay.
It never stops. It never ends. It goes on and on and on and on and wait. No. I must not stop. I must.
Hello, dear viewer. Has that time really come again? Since I was 16 years old, I have followed this project, meaning that this year will mark the 12th year of my existence backing this project. Checking in every once in a while to see if the lights are still on. I am 28 now, and as I gaze into the abyss of Cloud Imperium games, I cannot help but ponder. When will we see not just this game, but these games come to the light of day? I decided during the course of the summer that I needed a break from Star Citizen, and my, what a wonderful thing to see that regardless of what happens, nothing ever changes with Star Citizen. The same apparent issues so flagrantly ignored by the developers now having finally arrived to bite them in the ass yet again. And in spite of all this, I am still here, regardless. It is a game that I always end up coming back to because I have religiously followed this game for years. But doing this week after week, month after month, year after year is simply not tenable. But like a siren calling a sailor out to sea, I return to the glory and the mighty bosom and disappointment of Cloud Imperium games, ready to be hurt again. Star Citizen. Every time I dare to speak of Star Citizen in public, I get faced with the expected reaction of, isn't that the scam space game? Or, is that not a scam? Alternatively, how much do the ships cost again? All are of course very fair and just reactions to this project. This video in turn strives to explain to you the many triumphs and missteps that have occurred during the course of the development of Star Citizen and Squadron 42 and the studio behind it all, Cloud Imperium Games. This video strives to explain this project to those that may only have a cursory or peripheral understanding of what this project is, and this is of course to be delivered by yours truly. It will also explain some of the ways that people fell into this project and the true appeal of what these games have to offer. Most of us didn't walk into this project blind, but we were never aware of the timescale that were required, nor was this ever properly advertised. Or actually, it was advertised that it was only going to take about 2 years, so here we are. But nor was most aware of a certain someone's past. What is most fitting is that I started writing this video way before any of the recent controversies with the livestream, where the mainstream has once more turned its eye of Sauron upon Star Citizen. It is easy to say I knew something like this was on the way, but also if you paid any sort of attention to Star Citizen recently, it was more than inevitable that this outcome was going to happen. So therefore, I do feel a sense of vindication that this may be a video that Star Citizen needs at this particular moment in time. Because no matter what happens, no matter how long this persistent universe of controversies has gone on, like a cockroach, Star Citizen, CIG, Chris Roberts and Jared Huckabee just appears to survive time and time again.
Okay.
It is truly a wondrous experience to try and explain this project to those that are outside of it, because when you speak of this project aloud, you realize how absolutely insane that this all sounds to those that hear it for the first time, and even for those that have followed this project for years. At every turn, I must ask myself, if this game, if this company is not a scam, then why does it always make me feel like it is? Sure, the project exists, the company and its developers exist, and it fundamentally isn't a scam. But still, every time you talk about it with someone, every time you look at it, it feels very much like a scam. Sure, it isn't a scam, but that doesn't save it from having some of the hallmarks of a scam. With the sales of PNGs that will be released at some point, the rug pulling of showing the cool new features that are just around the corner but for some reason are never put into players' hands or talked about again. One cannot blame a person standing outside of this community and looking in that they think that this game looks like a scam, because CIG and Star Citizen continue to give them every reason to think that it is. But to get the best understanding of this project, it is best for us to take a quick gander into the past to garner an understanding as to what transpired in the Before-Fore Times that sadly lead us to where we are today. Chris Roberts is a maverick of the 80s and 90s gaming world, being a prolific game designer and creator that brightened the day of many a young gamer. Being half British and half American, he spent his early years in England where he got his first chance to create his own games on the BBC Micro series of computers, from those with more fantasy flavorings to the more classic King Kong. They were good enough to be published by the young Roberts, which is quite rare to see, seeing as he published and sold his first game at the age of 13. Not bad, Chris, not bad at all. Chris Roberts later in life moved to America and worked on such series as the Ultima series and the modern flight sim game Strike Commander at the game company Origin Systems. During the 90s, Chris had developed the series of games that he would become most famous for, the Wing Commander series, where you take on the role as a hotshot maverick pilot, Christopher Maverick Blair. Very subtle there, Chris. Very subtle indeed. I've already told this joke 3 times, don't blame me. Facing off an evil invading alien race of cats that seek to annihilate mankind. Various installments of the Wing Commander series would strive to explore the different vestiges of the world. And in real life, the series would help to sell the concept of PC gaming and further bring it to the mainstream. Skipping past a significant amount of history, Chris would later leave Origin System in the effort to gain full creative and financial control to create more focused titles, with his new studio, Digital Anvil, that I have a very hard time pronouncing for some reason. This would eventually culminate in the start of the development of the game Freelancer that would promise not just the world, but a universe. You'd take the role as, in essence, your very own man, your own character which you would create to embrace a universe of possibilities, where you could pick a direction and a profession at your heart's leisure to engage in an MMO environment with 128 concurrent players. This highly ambitious game became a highly sought after and awaited upcoming title that began development in 1999, which would be delayed time and time again until eventually Microsoft stepped in and bought Digital Anvil from Chris Roberts due to the delays, and would then go on to be released in 2003, after the removal of Chris Roberts, to critical acclaim and become a highly regarded title. But only after having been vastly reduced in scope with no multiplayer, no living or persistent universe, and no player-run economy to speak of. Like I said, a good game, but nowhere near what was actually promised. The greatest space sim that Chris Roberts always desired to make would not be made by him during the early 2000s. It would instead be made by a team in Iceland that made EVE Online. Go figure. After falling out with Microsoft, Chris Roberts decided to retire from games development, moving into producing movies, both good and bad. But the itch always remained there, at the back of his mind, the dream that made his fingers tingle, his pupils dilate, and his mouth water. The space sim. After nearly a decade away from games, he struck out once more into the games development world, coming out of retirement to look for investors to invest in his next project, Star Citizen. Alas, due to his hatred for publishers post-Microsoft and probably before, and the issues with Freelancer, the investors desired to put restrictions on Chris to ensure that the project would be feasible and deliverable. But Chris Roberts refused and decided to turn directly to the consumer instead, reaching out to crowdfund the game after his triumphant return back at the Game Developers Conference in 2012.
Oh, apparently our site is having millions of hits and is overloaded. So everyone out there, please be patient.
Riding off of his previous reputation from the beloved Wing Commander series, old and new fans alike flocked back to the banner of Chris Roberts, who stated that when he was making Freelancer, what had stopped him was simply that he was limited by the technology of his time. This time would be different, with technology having caught up to his ambitions. With the CryEngine 3 ready to be modified, this time it could be done. With pre-production and prototyping having been conducted in 2010 and 2011, and with the Kickstarter and the crowdfunding campaign launching in 2012, the project was met with stunning success, with the first round of crowdfunding having garnered them $6.2 million. Not bad.
Congratulations to all of you out there. Without you,
final is, I'm not
getting hot here now.
champagne.
Chris Roberts had come back from retirement to try and accomplish that nagging dream that had never abandoned him since the 80s and 90s. He desired to create a living, breathing universe with a player-run economy, player wars, an explorable universe to get lost in and, in essence, live a second life as a hotshot space pilot conquering the stars. But how long does it take to create a universe? I've no idea. But anyway, this has been his dream for decades. Better yet, let's hear it from the horse's mouth himself.
Hi, I'm Chris Roberts. Ever since I saw Star Wars as a wide-eyed 8-year-old, I dreamt of being a hotshot pilot saving the galaxy or a lovable rogue making my way across the cosmos. It inspired me to make Wing Commander and has influenced everything I've done since then. 10 years ago, after 20 years of making games, I was burned out, so I took a break. But I never stopped playing games nor loving them. And now, I'm ready to come back.
So it is important to understand this, because this, in essence, means that Chris Roberts tried to make Star Citizen a quarter of a century ago and failed. And now he spent almost another quarter of a century trying to do it again. Regardless, an important part of the crowdfunding campaign was not just Star Citizen, but also the promise for its sister game, the single-player campaign of Squadron 42.
What? I said, hotshot.
Dearest viewer, as the premier and leading Squadron 42 YouTuber, I can tell you, my autism for that particular side of the project knows no bounds. But alas, I have made a 3-hour-long documentary about that game's development and kind of a retrospective. So here, I shall be brief. If you want the full picture, you can go watch the journey of a lifetime with that video. But do please be so kind to go and watch that after you're done with this masterpiece. Thank you. Mwah. Put as simply as possible, Squadron 42 is the single-player campaign component of Star Citizen, which strives to introduce the player into the world of Star Citizen. Sort of like a gateway drug to the ship store, if you will. This game has been the subject of its own separate controversies and praises by those inside and outside of the community alike, with the marketing heavily focused on the great and star-studded cast that captured the imagination of those that pledged. And here we come to one of the greatest issues with Star Citizen and Squadron 42. Namely that when you look at it briefly, it looks good. It looks damn good. A game striving to be like a movie where you take part as a hotshot pilot facing an unknown and unnumbered alien threat to protect humanity, fighting alongside your wingman, none other than Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill and John Rhys-Davies both appear in the Wing Commander saga, hence why so many old Wing Commander fans were excited for Squadron 42, as it is to serve as the spiritual successor to those games. However, most of its controversies has to do with how much the star-studded cast has actually cost the game, and the innumerable release delays and the constant scope creep that has plagued the game. Because Chris Roberts didn't just want the actors to voice act and then have their faces scanned and then placed on another actor. They are actually there in the mocap studio where they capture each actor's live performance. I wonder how much that cost. But here is just a short list of some of the main actors that have been cast in Squadron 42. Mark Hamill, Gary Oldman, Andy Serkis, Gillian Anderson, John Rhys-Davies, Henry Goddamn Cavill, Ben Mendelsohn, Liam Cunningham, Rona Mitra, and many, many more. But Squadron 42 has been cooking in the background for the most part, especially since Cloud Imperium Games missed several release dates, such as 2014, 2016, 2017, probably 2018, 2020, and it just got embarrassing after that point, so they stopped giving us release dates until 2023, and it's supposed to come out this year. Oh dear. But how do you fund such a dream? How do you, after nearly 2 decades have passed, continue to rally the unwashed hordes of space sim enthusiasts and continue to convince them to open their wallets? With ships. Lots and lots of ships.
It's a rocket ship! It's a rocket ship!
What has basically become synonymous with Star Citizen is the ever-present macro and microtransactions that are the ships that relentlessly pester Cloud Imperium with every controversy. The ship sales are quite the meme at this point, but their effect and the sheer brilliance that marketing has displayed during the course of the project is sadly admirable. They have done their part in securing funding to the project, which is the whole point. All the different ship commercials we get to see, all of the deep lore and the specs that we get to hear about each ship and their components, serve to engross us, the consumers, into the world and convince us that this is the ship for you and me. That'll be 500 million gorillion billion please, and then you might get the game. But to give you an idea of how many sales events there is basically one each month. The Red Festival in January and February, Coromor or Valentine's Day in February, Stella Fortuna, which is St. Patrick's Day, which is in March, Invictus Launch Week in May, Alien Week in June, the Foundation Festival in July, Ship Showdown in September, CitizenCon in October, the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo in November, and Luminalia, which is Christmas, in December. And I probably missed a few because I just realized that I missed Pirate Week. Not to mention the dropship tax or the alien tax that are added on to further inflate some of the already ludicrous prices. The CitizenCons are of course one of the most major sales events that occur during the year, but they will be covered in a bit more detail later. Hilariously, player choice is one of the key things that CIG lauds and wants to support, apparently. But if we look at the different ship classes, there we can most obviously see a rising issue. That CIG's only catering to one segment of the community with the constant lack of industrial ships or more peaceful ships. It is rather staggering to see the difference between the amount of light fighters we have in comparison to refueling vessels. Alas, it does make perfect sense that they'd want to sell and propagate the need for ships to earn money for the project. It makes perfect sense that they'd want to emphasize the ships and the beauty therein in the space game that lauds its size and fidelity. And my word, do they emphasize the fidelity of this game. But the exuberant costs that they ask for these ships or packs of ships reach ludicrous amounts that, yes, can be likened to macro and microtransactions in other games to be fair, but the difference with Star Citizen is, however, that this is a game that has been in development since roughly 2010 and that has sold ships since 2012. Some that were sold way back when and have still not been released. Such as the Endeavour that promised modularity on an insane level and the ever-elusive and hilariously delayed Banu Merchantman that should release any day now. Not even Squadron 42 is safe from the relentless Starship advertisements that serve to make the errant spaceship nerd's mouth salivate.
Have you seen the F-8 up close?
No, sir.
The thing's a beast. Nimble, too.
12 maneuvering thrusters and 3 mains, it sure sounds like it. Sir.
But do mind, however, that originally the F-8 was not intended to be directly sold, but earned by playing Squadron 42, which would make them available for you to acquire, somehow. But here I assume that CIG needed a boost in cash flow and launched the Golden Ticket Hunt, where you could look in Star Citizen for the coveted tickets to get the ability to purchase the F-8 with real-world money. Alas, these golden tickets were not rare, not one bit, and were absolutely everywhere in almost every box in every bunker that you could ever find. So as per usual, CIG shat the proverbial bed and have quietly made it available during the innumerable sales events that we are plagued with. Wonderful. And with the sale of the supposedly and laughably last of the concept ships, we have apparently entered into a new era of Star Citizen ships, where instead of being just a pretty picture on our screen, they will strive to only sell those ships which will be straight to flyable or straight to release. Straight to jail, fuck off. And mind you, this is the most expensive ship that they have ever released, which cost a grand total of $5,000. I personally find this an insane purchase to have made because what is unclear to me is how this behemoth is supposed to make it into the game and not lag it to death. It is a ship that is truly so massive that it's probably going to have to be its own server to run smoothly. But what is going to happen when several of these ships will inevitably appear and start shooting at each other? I have no idea how they're going to pull this off, and the fact that they didn't really go into much detail on how this promised vessel would be delivered, I am not holding my breath. And if you ever decide to attempt to delude yourself into believing that these people, that CIG, have any sort of standards or boundaries that they won't cross, when the Odin, the $5,000 ship, was revealed to be going on sale, you had to write a 999-word essay on why you were a very good boy and deserved the chance to spend $5,000 of your own money, only for it then to turn out that the ability to buy an Odin was never actually vetted by an actual human and was seemingly made available to most that applied, no matter what they actually wrote. People that spent meticulous hours crafting their masterpiece essay on why they should get to have one and what they do with it paled in comparison to the "go fuck yourself" essays. Looking at Star Citizen's financials, you will see how they have increased the funding that they have received year on year, for the most part, with a steady or similar level of funds raised each year. But we have to take into account that behind all this, they were still in the process of building a company, building the studios, and the infrastructure required in order to facilitate steady communication between the separate studios. Cloud Imperium Games has 4 separate studios spread out across the civilized world, in North America and Europe. The home base of Cloud Imperium Games is the Manchester studio and is the largest of the quartet, that is the tip of the spear on Squadron 42's development. There is also CIG Austin, Texas, the studio that works on the Persistent Universe and manages quality assurance, which I am assured are actually asleep because where is my quality, boys? Come on. Get to it. Come on. There is also CIG Montreal, Canada, or more commonly known as Turbulent, which is a studio that was hired to outsource the netcode and the website development for CIG. They are probably one of the most consistently successful and productive of the studios, which is insane to think about because they are French. And last but not least, we have CIG Frankfurt in Germany. It was founded as a consequence of CIG needing any and all talent to help modify the CryEngine, which is why Cloud Imperium founded the studio to hire talent from Crytek, as that company was facing financial troubles, and it definitely led to no further consequences or problems. There was also a 5th studio in Santa Monica, which is in Hell, which we also know as California, that served mostly as an administrative location, but was later consolidated with the other studios to reduce cost and travel time for the Roberts. There are also several studios that Cloud Imperium outsourced development to from across the globe, but have over time become less important as development has been consolidated more and more within Cloud Imperium itself. But how open is this development really? When listening to any sort of public talk by the leading men and women of Cloud Imperium Games, you will inevitably hear about how open their development is, and how they are the most open games company out there. Which has been sort of true at points, and then at other points they are more closed off in some cases than other game companies, or just on the same level. Basically, the openness of the development of Star Citizen shifts and changes like the sands of the Sahara due to the winds of when CIG requires more of our money. In essence, they use the term open development moniker to trick us into believing that they are giving us an early scoop or an early look into what they are working on, to assure us that these things are coming soon or are just around the corner.
Regards to characters retiring and dying, will you be incorporating something to track the history of the characters or some way of creating an ancestral tree? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole idea I talked about in Death of the Spaceman, which was to give a sense of history and identity to your family tree. So I would see that, you would almost have, if you do some notable things, you would get an entry in the Galactopedia, and then the Galactopedia could probably talk about what your tree or family's been doing. And you certainly would have some level of that in your sort of own journal. But I'm actually thinking that what would probably happen is you sort of have your own like entry in sort of whatever the Galactopedia, and it would talk about your family tree, and maybe when you become a certain level of fame, that becomes available for everyone to see. But until then, it's just sort of like your own personal log of what your family history's been up to. So yes, the whole idea is to sort of look back and say, over the years, my great-great-grandson, my great-great-grandfather did this, my grandfather did that, my father did this, and I've done this, and that'd be really kind of cool. Okay.
However, they have over time learned not to give release dates or windows for most features and things going into the game, so they can't be held accountable for missing these dates. Because we never actually said it can be used as a defense, which is a very open way of making a game. But that doesn't negate the fact that CIG often heavily implies plenty of features and things are close to being released, so we are far more willing to overlook our skepticism so that we may part with our money. The most clear places where we can see the open development of Star Citizen is the official YouTube channel and the almost yearly CitizenCon events, the latter which we will cover a little bit later yet again. But not to overlook a key thing about this open development is also the developers behind the game that often speak directly to the community. There are clearly very passionate and competent developers behind Star Citizen that are trying to give us the best experience possible. And the clearest place where we can look at this passion is by looking at Planet Tech or VR. The fact that we got VR so soon is because of a developer that decided to make it due to his passion and desire to see it sooner in the game, which is amazing. The VR, especially with the pie-nice crystal light that I use, link in description below. Big kiss. Mwah. The VR adds a wonderful piece of enjoyment to the game that further engrosses you into the experience. Even though it's in its early stages, it does show great promise. The fact that it was driven into existence by one-man stream to implement it into the game sooner really goes to show the impact a single developer can have on a game. So well done, Sylvan. Absolute champ you are for giving us such a great gift. The VR also further shows the great potential the game has to be a highly immersive and mostly, quote, realistic experience. Of course, with a heavy asterisk at the end there because, who defines what is realistic and well done? The discussion in regards to how realistic and immersive the game is supposed to be, alongside how much of a sim it is meant to be, is one of the most contentious issues which the community argues about, and it is, as I said, a hot topic. The game ebbs and flows at its level of arcadiness, and it is understandable as the developers seek to balance the game and have it be playable for a mostly general and mainstream audience. Exceptions, compromises, and bullshittery must then be done, sadly. So sorry, sim boys. Can't always be happy, can we? But back to good devs, we actually were treated with Planet Tech much due to the same reason because of VR, because a single developer said that it was possible to introduce seamless planets way before 1.0, which has been proven handily as we've had seamless planets for about a decade now, but still no 1.0. With the looks of the game, you can most clearly tell that there's been significant progress made as they have perhaps not entirely switched engines, but moved onto a modified version of the CryEngine 3 and onto further developing it into their own separate branch, the so-called Star Engine, which granted is a very large and amazing technological achievement to make the CryEngine host a massive world with several planets and star systems across several servers, which is aided by the static server meshing technology. Server meshing, of course, being that ever-elusive technology that Star Citizen required for years, which allows the seamless transition from one server to another without a loading screen, which is supposed to make the dream of thousands of players eventually come true. Fundamentally, though, I believe it is completely fair and accurate to simply state that CIG rarely cares about feedback from the community unless it makes them look really bad, or it hurts them where it counts, their wallet. Which can obviously be seen by how frequently they ignore the warnings from the larger creators within the space and most influential voices, and then of course quietly remove them from the good boy list for seemingly no reason. Wonderful communication there, isn't it?
Got it!
The Great Yearly Con. This is the yearly event where players, backers from all over the world gather in one of the cities where CIG has a development studio. A great pilgrimage, if you will. I have never personally attended one, but alas, at some point I plan to attend a CitizenCon to see what it is like. As a consequence, I plan on not showering for at least a week to ensure that I blend in and do not stand out, so that the white knights can't detect me too quickly. Citizen cons do serve a dual purpose, not just to sell ships, but they are also the biggest dump of information we get almost every year that shows what they are working on and planning to release at some point. Because basically each Citizen Con serves to delete the memory of the previous con, which means nobody is ever quite sure on which of these features will be seen first and which are actually being worked on. Some are even fervently worked upon only to be dropped without explanation and or cause. I have made videos on these missing features and content, so I won't be going in on it, but you can look at it here. After you are done with this one, of course. As the years have gone on, one could easily find themselves thinking that these events are no longer about connecting the community to themselves and the developers, but to try and distract them from the inevitable missed deadlines. But more recently, in 2025, we were treated to the CitizenCon Direct, a watered-down and shorter CitizenCon that, instead of running for 2 days, ran a mere 2 hours, but still managed to waste time.
And while forests are super cool, let's focus on the grass today. Grass and grass, grass, grass to grass, grass, grass blade, or indeed a whole field of grass. Grass is grass, grass, grass. In case it's not already clear, Genesis is our name for a group of technologies that are improving our ability to build grass.
And this year in 2026, there will be no CitizenCon. For some reason that has yet to be explained properly. Or has it? There will instead be a party that has everything to do with Squadron 42. Meaning this could be a release party as has been maybe leaked, or it could be a media event to try and soothe the anger of the community as the people that were allowed to attend shills are going to get to play Squadron 42, but not me, the premier and the most stunning of all the Squadron 42 YouTubers. But this I believe to assure the public through these influencers that the game does indeed exist and they were able to play it. The jury is still out on this though. They did say that Squadron 42 was going to have a short marketing campaign, but they have yet to define what short means in CIG speak. But to understand the people that need to be soothed, we must take a peek at the wider community.
Alle gemeinsam?
Jared Huckabee is the content director at Cloud Imperium Games and one of the, if not the most important member of their community management team. He is the most common face that we see in recent years after the end of the previous iterations of the behind-the-scenes shows for Star Citizen. Jared Huckabee has thusly become the most public figure for CIG after Chris Roberts got put into the corner for talking too much and delivering too little. It sure is a thankless and difficult task that he has to navigate, keeping the community and the company happy. And that must be fairly brought up because it sure is not an easy job. Inevitably, however, we must arrive at a but when discussing this divisive figure, because over the course of recent years there has been a definite slowdown in actual behind-the-scenes content for Star Citizen, which was, mind you, supposed to have open development. And this slowdown is of course the fault of CIG and Jared, which went on the record and said the following.
Jared, we want more video content because we like it. I like it too. And there will be more video content next year. Probably not back to what it was at the high day, but I am bound and determined to do more next year than we did this year.
But surprise, surprise, there hasn't been much that has been delivered. Unless, of course, it has to do with the sale or advertisement of the new ships or a new patch. Mind you, every month they receive subscriber payments from the community which was supposed to go towards funding the behind-the-scenes shows separately without affecting the game's overall budget. But as there has been a significant slowdown, I can't help but wonder where all this money they get per month has been going towards if the video content hasn't increased in quality, nor has the number of videos increased. Sure, the sets that they have designed look quite cool and such, but alas, how much they aren't used is rather staggering. And now a tinge more of my personal opinion will be making an appearance, and I must firmly state that this is based on my fifis and the general vibe that I've been getting from Jared in recent years. And now I must plainly state, without leaning into personal attacks, only looking at his performance on the job as it relates to the job. I've spoken to several people that have spoken to him directly, and each individual has stated that he has been very nice to them, and he's overall a decent chap. But what I must personally call out is the way that he chooses to communicate with the community.
I want to second the information there, and I want to star explain. I'm going to star explain the information that was there. There will be no Squadron 42 presence at CitizenCon Direct this year.
Being from the community himself, having once been a fan like the rest of us way back when, one would expect he'd understand us a bit better how to speak to us fat nerds. Over time, I felt that his communication has grown more and more passive-aggressive and negative. Like we saw at the most recent livestream, the tinge of bitterness is not what the community needs at this time.
We lost.
Wow. So, we're at time. It's your show. Wrap it up.
And it's a feeling that I've heard others share, so I think it may be time for Jared to step back from the limelight and adopt another role at the company, because I, at this time, do not think he's doing a particularly good job. Or any job at all, because as stated, where the hell are all our videos? What is he working on? And if he is working on something, why in our open development game haven't they plainly stated as to why we aren't getting as much video content that we are paying for right after they said there'd be more? But hear ye, dearest viewer, 'tis not just the company that can do bad or make mistakes. It's also the consumer, the backers, the community itself that can also succumb to toxic positivity or bitterness. And that is what we must take a gander on further.
Stop the violence.
What is more important? What is better than to be a part of a flourishing community of individuals that like the same thing as you do? What makes it far greater is that Star Citizen is a community full of very kind, generous, and intelligent individuals. Some of the best you will probably ever meet, and it is important to say, sure, they have been taken advantage of by the company, which I vehemently dislike that they do, but one cannot deny the amount of truly wonderful people you can encounter within this community. But of course, like any other place that you may find yourself in, there are of course the rotten eggs, which one must tackle as you encounter them. These people come in many shapes and sizes, both on the positive side of the spectrum and the negative side. This can most clearly be separated or segregated into the two camps of the so-called Refundians and the White Knights. So I'm going to explain a bit what these two camps entail and how they generally tend to behave. This is a clinical study of the most fervent haters and supporters of the project. Trust me, bro.
What are you gonna do, bleed on me?
The White Knights of Star Citizen are a particular group of individuals that find themselves at home in such places as the Star Citizen Reddit or, God forbid, the Spectrum. Like I always say, CIG sure knew their audience when they decided to mirror their audience by calling their official forums the Spectrum. These people are the most fervent apologists, supporters, and spenders when it comes to the project, and they will defend their precious sunk cost fallacy until the very end. Any criticism, any negativity, or question they deem unworthy will be viciously and relentlessly attacked. Beware if you alert one of these bastards, because they will attack you as ferociously as the witch in Left 4 Dead, if the witch lived in its mother's basement, was fat, and a man. And to be clear, just because you are more positively inclined towards the game and argue against criticism, it does not automatically make you one of the servants of the Roberts. The devil is naturally within the details, where it is the attitude, the personal attacks, and the way in which they seek to stamp out dissent in the community that matters.
Get out of my room, Mom. I'm playing Star Citizen. Where's my money, bitch?
The Refundians can be found scattered across many places on the internet, but where you are most likely to discover these individuals are on the so-called Star Citizen Refunds Reddit. And it is basically what it sounds like, people that have gotten or tried to get a refund from Cloud Imperium Games for their purchase of their products. A refund, of course, being an entirely reasonable thing to get if you're not happy with the product that you have purchased. And getting a refund is an entirely reasonable position to have, because you may have purchased the game years ago, alongside several ships, and you feel like they have not delivered on their promises, nor has the ship that you purchased transcended a 2D space, and you feel like a refund is in order. Again, this is entirely reasonable, and I applaud people for trying to help others secure a refund to a project that has been shaky since almost the very start. But where the Refundians slip into obsession and hilarity is that some of them adopt the same fervor and zealotry as the White Knights, but on the opposite side of the spectrum. They will just as fervently attack you and deride you for deciding to in any way, shape, or form enjoy the game. and they just as obsessively follow the game just like the White Knights do, which is fucking hilarious.
Get out of my room, Mom. I'm playing Star Citizen. General Kenobi.
Again, however, I find it is important to iterate that amongst these groupings there are very reasonable individuals which one can have a constructive discussion with. Some of the best positives for CIG and Star Citizen are the White Knights with legitimate sources, and the same goes for Refundians, which are one of the best sources for properly vetted and researched criticism. So it is about taking it all with a grain of salt and remaining objective to the fact that there are very good and very bad things about Star Citizen and Cloud Imperium games. But we, as reasonable adults, must look at the evidence and come to a conclusion based on logic and facts instead of mafifis. And on YouTube you can of course find this mirrored, people that fall into the more critical side of things and the positive side, with extremes to naturally be uncovered here and there. But overall there is a good nuance within the YouTube community, and I think we all have our own chance to be insufferable as we please. And if you ever dare to peruse the Reddit, or even worse, the Spectrum, you may come across something that looks a little bit like this. Removed by Knight Rider CIG. And you may also find this hilariously being mentioned in the YouTube comments. But this little statement is quite a common sight on the Spectrum, especially for those that are in any way, shape or form critical of CIG, even for the most minor of criticisms, you have a risk of having your post removed by the ever-present spectre of the Knight Rider. And due to CIG constantly stamping out dissent and criticism, places like the Refund Reddit aren't just warranted, they're necessary. I can't do a joke. Because otherwise, it quite literally would just be an echo chamber. It is hilarious to look at the Spectrum during any major controversy and see the moderators working overtime to stamp out any and all dissent like they are playing whack-a-mole with our opinions and posts. Which is why I don't ever go on there or post there, because the Spectrum and CIG are cringe. This has gone on for so long that there are even rumblings that this particular individual or account isn't actually a single person, but a unified account or moniker that the moderation team utilizes in order to avoid scrutiny and instead to displace the accountability. But it does appear that the Knight Rider is actually a real, singular individual, which should put any such conspiracy to rest. Unless... No, I have no idea. I think it's just the one guy, he's just a bit zealous. But like the most recent controversy in regards to the Siege of Orison livestream, plenty of posts have been removed and purged in CIG's failed attempt to control the narrative. Everyone can see them burying their head in the sand on this, and the lack of a swift correction and the lack of any public statements is becoming the norm for CIG. And this cannot in any way, shape or form be allowed to continue without significant community pushback. It is embarrassing that this is the way they have chosen to act, and it is unbefitting of the most successful crowdfunded gaming project of all time.
That's my opinion!
The best argument against Star Citizen is to play Star Citizen. It is difficult to properly capture and explain just how amazing and epic this game can truly be when it works as it is intended. It can be one of the most flabbergasting, immersive, beautiful, tense, and touching experiences which you could ever have as a gamer. It is a marvel of technology. This game is a triumph in a lot of ways, and like most people in the community say, both those criticizing the game and those that love it, is that Star Citizen is a vessel of limitless potential. This potential is something that we stand there, virulently bashing the window, trying to gain CIG's attention to say that we believe in them and the project. But changes have to be made within the company in order for them to truly succeed. Star Citizen needs a win right now. With all the negativity surrounding the project, they are more in need of a proper big win than ever before. But it is almost as if they are intentionally trying to fail. I am not even particularly angry anymore about any of this, just bitterly and utterly disappointed in how and what this company has developed into and what it continues to do. I personally do not hold any desire to be embittered or angry or annoyed about this project, but this is still the feeling they are cultivating within long-standing fans of this project. I believe that this is sort of how they get you. They hype you up to the very peaks of your imagination and your wildest dreams, and then they slowly grind you down. They do their best to get as much from your bank account as possible, and then slowly and grindingly wear you down until you lose total interest and move on. After everything that has been said and all that hasn't been done, can you as a rational human being conclude, genuinely at this pace, where do you think CIG will be in the next 5 years? If you have followed the project for any length of time, where did you think CIG was going to be 5 years ago? Did you believe that we'd be locked within this endless cycle of disappointment, with the release of a single mission being celebrated instead of the far more important core tech needing to be fixed so every session is not perpetually plagued with bugs? The development of this game could easily span upwards of 20 plus years, and it will be achieved soon enough. One day we are going to sit here and reach year 25 of this game's development, and I worry about the progression towards that point due to the behavior of this company. When this game is a fifth of a century old or a quarter of a century old, where will we actually be in terms of available gameplay, features, core tech, stability, traversability, ease of play, simple enjoyability, and a game that a new player can actually tackle without having to have someone else hover over them to try and teach them how to circumnavigate the game not wanting to be played? At what point do we as a community of gamers, interested parties, or simply those curious decide that it's been quite enough, thank you, to rally together and make a genuine effort to counteract CIG? Perhaps a Star Citizen Backers Union is in order at this bloody point. All you have to do is to literally not spend any money. These people have had more than enough, and they do not deserve a single coin, a single cent of your money more at this point. Yes, game development is hard. Yes, they have come a somewhat long way in some regards, and they have achieved great things. But simply put, it isn't enough, and it isn't what we deserve. Not in year 16 or 14 of development. I am tired of the endless need to reassert the fact that I still want good things to happen with the game, and I enjoy the game, but I want it to get better. But every time I listen to anyone who dares criticize the game, we must reaffirm our belief in this great project as we embark on the great Star Citizen jihad. We are owed better and more considerate communication by CIG, as ultimately, without us, there would be no project. Star Citizen has a handful of private investments and loans, yes, but the vast majority of money raised has been fans of Chris Roberts and this project. Communication only boiling down to sales events or ship videos, which are also just sales events, don't cut it. We need genuine status updates as to why exactly certain features are introduced to us, then just as swiftly removed and taken away from the spotlight to be forgotten for years. Squadron 42 is not to be forgotten, as its ever-elusive release looms fatefully in the distance. And what Squadron 42 could potentially be for CIG is a win. A win that they are desperately in need of getting after years and years of terrible, utterly terrible PR with the wider gaming community, and the internal Star Citizen community to boot. So if you ask me today, right now, do I think that this company, these people, this person, Chris Roberts, can he actually accomplish this? Can this overweight, middle-aged millionaire accomplish the impossible and repair his ever-ailing reputation? Can he actually make the best damn space sim? Yes. Maybe. No.